welcome back to the Misfits and Mysteries Podcast. It's a weekly podcast where we take you through the world's wackiest phenomena, from Bigfoot and aliens to psychology and history and everything in between. We are your hosts, Emmy.
And Steve.
So, Steve, this is our second week of our podcast, and I feel like we've learned a lot.
Yeah, we have.
Don't you?
We have learned a lot.
We've learned that we hate the sound of our own voices.
I've had to listen to the podcast at this point, I think, 3 times, and it's been rough. I've had to teach myself to listen to it with a very critical lens, and not in a way where I think about my voice, but I think about what I can do to make myself sound like less of an idiot. A lot of removing filler words like and like and right. There's a lot of those that I just can't correct because how I talk apparently is I say and then the word I want to say immediately after, making it impossible to edit out the So I've learned a lot about both of our speech patterns over the past week, and it's been interesting to say the least.
I've also noticed that we say the word spooky probably like 400 times. It's like every other word.
I did an official tally. I said spooky at least 10 times. And the worst part is 7 of those 10 times were when we were talking about hypnosis, which isn't even spooky.
I mean, I guess it is a little bit spooky, but you think it would be in the ghost part.
You think, but I only said it about 3 or 4 times in the ghost part, which is wild.
So what are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to talk about dreams, particularly night terrors and nightmares. And we are going to have a little chat about horror movies. And
I actually have a mystery topic that...
Ooh, that's exciting. Mystery topic.
Steve does not know this topic. So do we want to jump into that first?
Yeah, let's go with it. And now a quick break for a word from our sponsor, Anchor. Anchor is one of the easiest ways to make a podcast. It's what we personally use to make our podcast, the Misfits and Mysteries Podcast. It's one of our favorites because it's super easy to use and it's free.
They even have creation tools that let you record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, which has been awesome for us because we're not experts, but they make it super easy.
Another great thing about Anchor is that they distribute your podcast for you, so you don't have to go through the hassle of uploading your RSS feed individually to every single podcast hosting service out there. They get you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts.
And you can start making money from your podcast right away with absolutely no minimum listenership, which has been great for us.
And what's awesome is this is a tool that's super useful. Everything you need to make a professional podcast, you can find in one easy-to-use place.
So download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So now let's get back to business.
Back to business.
All right, so what's the mystery topic?
Mystery topic is Geff the talking mongoose.
What the actual fuck are you talking about? Geff the talking mongoose? This is exciting.
Yeah. First of all, I'm just not realizing that I'm not really even sure what a mongoose is. Do you know what a mongoose is?
So are mongooses like ferrets and weasels?
Okay.
Or more like a badger. I actually, just quick aside, I watched a great Curiosity Stream documentary about badgers.
Oh.
No, I lied. It's about wolverines.
Same diff. All right.
Very different. On Curiosity Stream, please sponsor us. I love that. I've been bothering you on Twitter nonstop because I want to be sponsored.
Steve's dreams will come true.
One day. All right, so tell me about this talking mongoose.
All right, so this is a story, and it's pretty wild, so buckle in.
All right.
So this was the year 1931.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Irving moves into a very isolated farm with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And it is on the Isle of Man, which I think is off the coast of Britain. And it's at a place called Cashin's Gap in the hamlet of Dalby, which may become important. So just remember that.
The hamlet of Dalby. Got it.
So they're in this very isolated house. They have no phones. I think they can't even really send letters. It's just in the middle of nowhere. And so it's Jim, Margaret, and their daughter, Voiry. Jim and Margaret are in their 50s. Voiry is 13. And their first night in the house, they are eating dinner as a family, and they hear tapping on the wall. And they're like, that's kind of weird. Maybe there's a rat in the wall or something. So they go over and they try to figure out what it is. And they hear snarling and growling. And they're like, that's just really weird. So they start putting out rat traps and rat poison. But after a few days, that doesn't really work. And they're still hear this thing coming from the wall. So Jim, one day, he realized that the rat poison wasn't working. So he starts barking at the wall, okay? You're like a dog, to try to scare what they thought was a rat away. And it barks back. So they're freaking out. And Jim tries doing different animal noises. And each time he does a different animal noise, the creature in the wall will mimic the noise back.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So it'll do like cat noises. It's got the dog down. It's got like a cow noise. And eventually they get to the point where Jim will just say the name of an animal. Like he could say bird and it would start tweeting. Mm-hmm. So clearly it was understanding him on some level. And Larry kind of gets this idea, well, maybe I should try, if it can mimic things, maybe I should try singing it a nursery rhyme. So she sings it a nursery rhyme and it can sort of sing it back. And that's what starts the creature being able to talk.
Wow.
So there is a creature in the wall that is now talking to the family. Okay?
Okay, this is nuts.
So Voiry is trying to talk to it, and it's sort of in the same way that a baby would learn to talk. Like it starts by babbling and then sort of evolves into shorter words and longer words until Voiry and the creature can have a full conversation. So it is at this point that they learn that the creature's name is Geff.
Yeah.
And he is a mongoose. And it's Geff, G-E-F.
Geff, so Geff spelled incorrectly.
Yeah, so he's being like extra.
Yeah.
Or he just doesn't know how to spell.
Probably has no idea how to spell considering he's a mongoose.
Yeah, exactly. So Geff tells them that he is from Delhi, India, and he was kicked out for some reason, and he somehow scampered his way all the way to the island of Man. So apparently he can swim as well.
He can swim a very far distance.
Right? I think it's like 4,000 miles or something.
That's a long distance from India to England.
Yeah. Across a body of water to an island.
Yeah.
So the family, despite them being able to talk with Geff, they rarely ever saw him, but Voiry was able to see him one time, and she said that he was very small, like the size of a rat, even though he's a mongoose.
So he was actually a mongoose. He wasn't a man in their wall pretending to be a mongoose? No,
she said that she saw him.
Okay. That's weird.
that makes sense, right?
Sure, why not?
So he's the size of a rat. He has yellow fur and a flat snout like a hedgehog and a long bushy tail. And Geff said that he would sometimes leave the house and hitch a ride on top of people's cars and go into town, and he would come back with gossip for the family, and they would just like chat about gossip. And they also said that he had very good hearing powers. So if they would try to whisper so Geff couldn't hear, he'd be like, I know that you're whispering, and tell you exactly what you had said.
Oh, wow.
He could also sing. And there was this one time where Geff was singing a very inappropriate song. And Margaret, the mom, said, you are no animal to me. And he said, no, I am the Holy Ghost.
Wow. So
This was the start of Geff becoming demon-like.
Wow.
So he told them, I am an extra clever mongoose, but I am not always kind. And he was reported to have called Jim a fat-headed gnome.
Wow.
Which is like a pretty good insult.
That's clever.
He's a clever mongoose. And it only got worse from there. So Voiri started to kind of be afraid of Geff because he would get very angry sometimes. And one night she slept in her parents' room because she was so afraid of Geff. And he told them, I'll follow you wherever you put yourself. And they said that he even would shake things on the walls. He would be able to move things. Even though he wasn't in the room, he had some kind of powers, I guess, where he was able to move things.
So, out of curiosity, what soured the relationship? Sounds like they had a pretty good thing going.
That's a really good question. It seems like Geff just sort of was starting to like show his true colors. I think he was getting a good rapport with the family, so they trusted him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he became evil.
I do feel, just a random aside, I was thinking that the animal I would imagine would personify the abusive alcoholic stepdad is probably some sort of weasel. So I guess a mongoose really fits that.
I think that's actually really accurate.
Yeah, so it kind of makes sense. Like the scumbag stepdad. Maybe that's
yeah,
all
this sounds like gross little weaselly thing.
Yeah, wears like a wife beater and is always drunk, has like a little belly hanging out. If someone wants to like Photoshop that, we'll tweet it out and give you credit. That'd be incredible.
That would be amazing. I think
the cigar, having like a cigarette in one hand, PBR in the other.
I was gonna say like a Bud Light or something.
Screaming at his stepchild. That'd be pretty great.
That would be pretty great.
Back to your story.
All right, so Geff would also do things that were just like really obnoxious. He would just groan loudly for 30 minutes at a time. And when the family asked him what he was doing, he'd be like, oh, I'm just having fun with you guys. Which is just like so petty. Like the most petty demon you've ever heard. So the family at this point was just getting so freaked out that they called in some kind of ghost specialist or something. I don't know if it was that specifically.
Or an exterminator?
No, it was someone who was maybe it was someone doing an exorcism. I don't know.
Did they just try to get an exterminator to remove the weasel? Just to see if it was just a really smart weasel?
That should have been what they did, but
that would have been my first go-to before I got... Actually, I don't know if you want to risk that, though. Because if it's a demon, you piss it off.
That's true. And you probably can't kill it.
Yeah, probably not.
So they called in this person, and he launched a whole investigation into this. And he found some things that were a little off about the family's story.
Mm-hmm.
So they found that wherever the noise was coming from, so they looked into the house and found that there was a system of vents where if you said words into a vent, it would come out upstairs and it sounded like the person was in that room.
Yeah.
And they also said that Geff often sounded a lot like Voiri, which, this is a 13-year-old girl. If the family is going along with this, that's pretty sick to bring your kid into it.
Yeah. Well, if it sounded like Voiri, maybe Voiri's the one doing it, which would explain why she was the one who saw it.
Exactly. But there's also stories of, like Voiri's in her parents' room and Geff is talking to them. So they're not sure if maybe Voiri is almost like a ventriloquist or something and can like talk without moving her mouth. But they also found footprints and stains on the wall and hair samples that the family had brought as like evidence of Geff. And they took this to a lab and they ran the hair samples, and the hair samples were found to be that of a sheepdog. So pretty sketchy.
Pretty sketchy.
So
when did this story happen again? I don't know if you ever said the date. Was this
1931?
Oh, okay. So like science is the real thing.
Yes. And so eventually what it boils down to is there was a psychologist who studied this story, and they think that Voiri had a split personality almost.
That's interesting.
And that's why she would be like really friendly and then be like a devil. And they think that this may have stemmed from the family living in this really isolated place, and like they just had to come up with some imaginary thing to talk to because they had no one to talk to.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's actually really fascinating. That's honestly more interesting than if it was a real demon.
You think so?
Almost. I just think it's really interesting when people really believe things that they're fabricating. That's a weird thing where you can be completely involved in fabricating something and you can believe it's completely real. I don't have any examples to back this up, but
well, it would be very interesting because it's either like Voiri is able to completely fool her entire family, or the whole family was in some sort of delusion together.
Mm-hmm. I guess this sort of goes back to mass hysteria. Perhaps they all believed it was real.
Yeah.
But even though it wasn't, they just sort of believed it.
You have to do that dancing sickness.
I know. I have to. I was just lazy and made a list instead this week. It's the dancing plague. I'll make a note of it right now.
So the last little bit of this story, the family was getting so much heat because people were like, "This is fake. Why are you doing this?" That they ended up moving out of the house, and a new man moved in, and he did not hear anything in talking in the wall.
Yeah.
But he did, about 3 months living in the house, trap a animal that he said seemed to be neither a ferret nor a weasel, and it fit all the descriptions of Geff.
Wow, that is insane.
Isn't that strange?
I bet they had a pet, not an aardvark. What the hell is it called? Pet
weasel?
No, what is he? USA.
Mongoose.
Mongoose. I don't know. I said aardvark.
that would probably be more interesting.
That'd be so interesting if it was an aardvark, like Arthur. All right, but so maybe there actually was one in there, and then their insane daughter created a whole narrative around it, and her parents. I don't know. That's weird.
Do you think mongooses live in Britain?
No, I think they live in Africa or Australia. No, they're mammal.
That makes sense because he said he came from India.
I have no idea where mongooses live.
Maybe that's worth a quick Google.
Yeah, I can do that. Africa, so they're primarily found in Africa, covering most of the continent. Some species occupy parts of Southeast Asia and the Iberian Peninsula. These things look kind of mean. They have teeth.
Well, this was a mean mongoose.
Yeah, they are. You know what? I think meerkats are a type of mongoose, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Also,
Well,
worth a quick Google.
okay, so this is Geff was allegedly from India, even though mongooses only live in Africa, and he ended up in.
Well, they live in the Iberian Peninsula. What the main difference between a mongoose and a meerkat is that the mongoose is a family of mammals, and the meerkat is a small carnivorian belonging to the mongoose family. But what the hell does that mean? So they're both mongooses. I think meerkats are awesome. We should talk about meerkats sometime.
I love meerkats.
They live about 12 to 14 years in captivity.
A mongoose or a meerkat?
A meerkat. Fun fact, your meerkats, both male and female, only weigh about 1.6 pounds.
They're so cute. Now I'm just looking at pictures of them.
There's some videos where like they're taking the nature documentaries and they're there for so long that the mongooses no longer fear the humans and use their heads as like lookout posts. So they just like climb up the cameraman and just stand there and like use it as a lookout post. It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
That is so cute.
I'll find you the video. All right, we need to get back on track now. So, Emmy, where did you find that Geff story? It was pretty great.
So I actually have to plug, this is my favorite podcast called That's Why We Drink.
Mm-hmm.
And they recently covered this story. So I thought it was a great story for our podcast too. I did a little bit extra background research. But it's just so funny. And I feel like there's a lot packed in there. There's demons, mongooses, gossip. It's got everything. Mental illness.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. I really appreciate you sharing it with me. That made my day.
Amazing.
Right. So I guess we're going to talk about dreams now. We're going to talk about dreams now.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally only have stress dreams, so I really don't like dreaming.
Which is so sad.
Did not really start dreaming. I guess I dreamed as a kid, but I stopped dreaming for a long time. I didn't really have to start dreaming again until high school, where I had this one lit class where we did this thing for a while. We were learning about Freud. So we had to do a dream journal. I had to write things down. So I started dreaming, and it was great for a while. But now when I dream, I only ever have stress dreams. And I understand the value of stress dreams because it's prepping me for a real life situation. I'm not a very stressed out guy normally, but it's miserable. So I stopped writing down my dreams, and I made an active effort not to remember my dreams because I was miserable. Every morning I wake up really stressed. And then I started, at one point, I tried meditating with an app, and it gave me really awful stress dreams in the morning when I woke up. So I just really have put the kibosh on my dreaming. I purposely look at my phone and just forget what I dreamt about because it's always miserable. Which is a real shame, though, because dreaming is kind of fun and silly, but it's just...
That's so sad. I love dreaming.
It's like awful for me. What about you? What's your experience with dreams? Are they pleasant?
I usually have pretty good dreams, actually. And I like dreaming. I always try to think of what does this mean. Like I'm a big try to like analyze my dreams person, even if it doesn't mean anything. I just think it's kind of fun.
So I already know what my dreams mean because they're just really obvious. Just for example, there's this one dream that stuck with me really well where I was on a nice relaxing lake house vacation and there was a stranded dog in the middle of the water. I had to go rescue it, right?
Yeah.
So I get this dog, would rent a boat or whatever, find its owners, and the owners thanked me. And then they were like, can you watch our kids for a second? The next thing I know, I get a phone call. They're like, hey, we're back in California. Can you fly our kids out to California for us? So in the middle of the lake, I have no money. I have to get these fucking kids and this dog from, I don't even know where, somewhere in the Northeast to California by like 9 p.m. the next night. And it was just miserable. I just scrambled, had to get these shithead kids together, them in their goddamn airport, fly their asses to California and fly back. Then the overarching theme of all my dreams is that someone else fucks up and I have to deal with it. And that's Turns out that's what stresses me out the most in the world, is dealing with other people's shit.
Is that a common theme for you in your dreams?
Oh my God, yeah. I was reading through my dreams. I have so many written down that I just didn't actually get through all of them. There are some gems in there that maybe if we cover this topic again, I'll actually have prepared and ready to share. But basically, the overall theme of my dreams is someone else fucks up and I have to deal with the aftermath. And I'm usually ill-equipped to, or have not a lot of time. And I think it has really prepared me for real life, because every time I go to sleep, I'm stressed. I wake up stressed out. So when I have real life stressful situations, my body's been training me for this nonstop for the past 8 years at this point? I don't even know.
So what do you think about the theory that dreams are actually like an alternate reality?
So the thing I don't really buy about that is, I think the more valid theory that's I think, from based on my limited research when I did psychology, was that dreams are evolutionarily advantageous in some way. Otherwise we wouldn't have them, or we wouldn't still have them. Then we would have evolved away from dreaming. And I really love the idea that what dreams do is prepare you for real life situations. So it's like running through your day and what things could go wrong and how to deal with them. It's basically like simulating real life to prep you while you're asleep still. And in my experience, where I only have stress dreams, I really buy this.
Yeah.
My dreams are super applicable to my real life. And
okay, that's what I was just going to say, because my dreams are just so out there weird that I don't know what this could possibly be preparing me for.
Yeah. Are there like themes of stress and stuff like that ever? Or do things go wrong? Or do things go right? Because if you're all happy.
I've definitely had stress dreams before. Like, I've had dreams where usually if I have a stress dream, it's I'm late. And it's like I woke up late and then I try to get dressed and I don't have any shirts in my closet or something. And then it's just like everything's going wrong and it just kind of snowballs until I'm like hours and hours late. That's my most usual stress dream.
See? So I don't think all dreams have to have a purpose or a really obvious purpose. But I personally subscribe to the idea more that they're evolutionarily advantageous in some way. And to go along with that, let's say dreams evolved with the first anatomically modern Homo sapiens, right? So if they evolved that long ago, it's not crazy to assume that at least in some people, maybe, your genes are different. So you still dream. Maybe whatever your genetic makeup is causing you to have dreams that are completely irrelevant and don't help you at all. I'm not a psychologist or a scientist at all. I'm just using what knowledge I have about how things work with evolution and psychology and just making an educated guess here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have heard that there are some dreams that people across all cultures have had. Dreams that your teeth are falling out, or that you're in like a white room and you can't get out of it or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. Want to know a really weird fact? So before the invention of televisions, people dreamed in color. And then with the invention of black and white movies and TV, people dreamed in black and white until color TVs came around. Isn't that really weird?
What? That is so weird.
I don't know if that's more. That is harder to prove. It might just be anecdotal evidence, but that's just a really wild fact to me, is that humans dreamed in color because that's how we see the real world. And then with the invention of black and white film, people started to dream in black and white.
That's crazy. Well, they also say like that's how you know you're fluent in a language, if you start dreaming in that language. Interesting.
Well, that could also, like, I've also heard that dreaming just helps you reinforce memories. So maybe your dreams are so weird because you learned a lot of things that day, let's say. Because when you dream is when your short-term memories get turned into your long-term. Your brain just gets rid of all of what it deems useless. So maybe on those days where things make no sense, maybe we learn too many facts, Emmy, and all the facts are into one crazy dream.
All right. Well, do you want to hear my really weird dream?
Yeah, I do.
Or just one example of the many really weird dreams that I have.
Right.
So this actually happened. I happened to be taking a playwriting class in college where you were supposed to create a play about a dream that you had. And I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to write down, because I had some stories in mind, but nothing that was worthy of a play. And then I just happened to have this dream like the night before I was going to write it. So maybe that's why. So basically the dream goes, I was playing a video game with my sister, and there was a cockroach in the corner of the room. And every time that we got like a coin or a point in the video game, the cockroach would get bigger. And I know this, but it's not like freaking me out. Like, it's just kind of like how things go. And so I went to go to the bathroom, and my sister comes in with this giant cockroach, like huge, like she can barely hold it. And she drops it on the ground, okay? And when she drops it on the ground, it becomes a half cockroach, half dog hybrid.
Ooh, that's freaky.
It was, Steve, when I tell you, I have never felt love for anything more than I felt for this cockroach dog. I seriously felt like it was my own child. I laid in bed with this dog and seriously, when I tell you, it felt like my own child. The love that I felt for this dog. In real life, I don't know if I've ever felt that way about anything before. And I went downstairs with the dog, and it was Christmas, and it was like the best day ever. Then I was just sitting on the couch with the dog, and the dog told me this entire poem. And when I woke up, I had the whole poem in my head.
That's wild.
So I was able to write down the poem and put it in my play that I wrote. The emotions that I was feeling and like the poem, it was such a good dream.
That's so crazy. I guess to go to the complete opposite of that, when was the last time you remember having a nightmare? I don't mean like sleep paralysis and night terrors, which we're going to get to later, but when was the last time you actually had just a nightmare?
I think I haven't had a true nightmare in a while, but I have had some bad experiences. More when I was a kid, I was always afraid that someone was in my closet or something, or like it was just like really hard for me to fall asleep because I was so scared, and then I would have bad dreams about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because
do you want to hear a bad dream that I had? I'll tell it quickly.
Go for it. That'd be fun.
So this was when I was a teenager. So in the dream, I woke up. Okay.
So you had like a lucid dream, or?
No, I had a dream that I had just woken up, basically. And I like sit up in my bed, and I'm looking out the window, and there's this really bright light. And then I hear someone open the door. And I'm like, that's really weird. Who would be coming in the door right now at the middle of the night? So I go downstairs, and there's this group of teenagers running after my mom with a knife. And I'll spare you the gross details, but it was not a good dream. And I just remember seeing, they wrote on the wall, like, "You're next," or something.
Ooh, spooky.
And then I woke up in real life. I'm not kidding, Steve. I woke up in real life, and a few seconds later, I see a light outside my window, and I hear my door open.
Oh, shit. That's awful.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
It ended up just being my brother coming home late at night, but I was like, this is it.
I'm done.
My whole family is done. I am next.
Wow. That's really frightening. I actually haven't had a nightmare since I think maybe middle school. at the latest, but might have been even earlier in my life. But when I was doing my research for this topic, I found out that only about 2 to 8% of adults are, as WebMD said, plagued with nightmares. And whereas 10 to 15% of all children between the ages of 3 and 6 will have nightmares. And that was kind of interesting because I had a similar experience. But unfortunately for myself, I haven't really had a real nightmare since I was a kid. However, I now get sleep paralysis and night terrors, which is exponentially worse than any nightmare I've ever had in my life. Because while nightmares are miserable, at least you're well rested after. I have not rested at all.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a nightmare and a night terror?
So, I'm glad you asked. So a night terror is related to sleep paralysis, which people used to think was super rare, but apparently now they say about 50% of all people on Earth experience them.
Oh, and wow.
There's probably a lot of people that haven't sampled, so it could be a lot more. So about 50% of the global population will have at least one experience of sleep paralysis and night terrors. I used to think that I would have just this recurring nightmare, but based on a lot of research I did for this, it turns out I actually had sleep paralysis. I mean, I've known this for a while, but as a kid, I always have this nightmare where there's this coyote or wolf or something breaks down my door, and I'm trying to escape, and it's holding me by my ankle, and I can't escape or move.
Oh.
And the difference between like a night terror, as they're called, and a nightmare is that with a nightmare, it's all you're asleep the entire time. Whereas with sleep paralysis, what happens is you're in a transitional phase between being asleep and awake. So although you're still dreaming, your brain's still partially awake, so you think everything that you're dreaming is actually happening to you.
Yeah.
So it's really miserable. And unfortunately, last week, I guess I was really stressed. That's one of the things they say triggers it. But I had 2 nights in a row where I had night terrors, and it was terrible. So there's 3 types of sleep paralysis. And one of them sounds good, and I unfortunately have never gotten that one. The first is the, quote, intruder hallucination, which is the perception of a dangerous presence or person in the room with you. And then the second is a chest...
That's awful. That's my worst nightmare.
And the second is chest pressure hallucination, right? Which incites a feeling of suffocation and, of course, occurs simultaneously. Typically is simultaneous with in the intruder hallucination. So you think that this intruder is on top of you, suffocating you. The third time, one sounds awesome, and I'm so upset I never get it. It's called VM hallucinations, and basically you have what you perceive to be an out-of-body experience, like you're levitating or floating. I don't get that one. I get number 1.
So you just get the demon.
Yeah. So basically last week was really miserable. I had, I think, 2 straight nights where at 4 a.m. there was something in my room. But before it got to me, I was able to jolt myself awake. I'm a really light sleeper, so movement gets me. And both times I was in my bed, and I saw down the hallway this creature walking. It's like a man, I think. There's something walking towards me. I actually started sleeping with the controls to my lights right next to me because I just need the lights on. Basically, 2 nights in a row, I jolted awake. The first night was weird. It was really freaking me out. It really freaked me out, but I was able to fall right back to sleep. So it was like 4 a.m. and I was tired. The second night, I was extra spooked, and I actually legit turned all the lights on, had to investigate every goddamn inch of my room. Unfortunately, I'm in the attic of my parents' house, and it's a pretty big space to be exploring at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So
you actually got up and were like...
Oh, yeah. This time, I beat it, right? Like, I jolted and got the fuck out of bed before that thing got near my bed. So I avoided the chest pressure hallucinations, which is like the worst part.
Oh.
You know it's fake, and basically, if you focus really hard on like wiggling a toe, you can break out of it. And it's just miserable. But it's not as freaky. So this is one of the things I think is interesting about it is everyone sees pretty much the same thing. It's usually like a demonic dog, they describe it as, or like a faceless demonic human man, like trying to strangle you. And I think that this actually might have inspired a lot of myths about demons and possessions.
That's interesting.
And I think the reason that it's a cross-cultural thing, you hear about demons and whatnot, is because if 50% of the global population gets sleep paralysis, and we're all across the world seeing pretty much the same things, then it's not out of the question for people to think, oh, there's a demon. There must be a demon possessing you, especially when you don't have any like deep understanding of what dreams are.
So, Steve, what do you think it means that everyone else sees a demonic dog and it's like the worst dream ever, and I have a dream about a cockroach dog and it was my best dream ever?
I think there's something fundamentally wrong with you. No, but
it's weird coincidence.
Weird coincidence. Yeah, so the dog's not as common. It's usually a faceless person or doesn't have a face that you can make out. But what's really interesting is actually the prevailing theory about why we get sleep paralysis. So you only get sleep paralysis when you're coming out of REM sleep, which is your deepest sleep, which is when your brain and body are the most disconnected. So what they think happens is at that point, when you're in REM, everything is slowed down. So what they think happens is, because it's a transitional issue, it's transitional sleeping disorder, where it's like you're waking up from a dream. So what scientists think is that you wake up and your body is still in REM sleep. So your breathing is slowed down because you're breathing heavily. And your eyes are, and you're paralyzed because you don't want your body to be walking. You don't want to be walking when you're sleeping. It's dangerous.
Right.
The thing happens is, because we have these very innate, strong fight or flight responses, I feel like I'm being choked and I can't move. My brain is making up a threat because it's safer to assume that you're being attacked than to not assume you're being attacked and get killed. So even though you can't move, your brain's like, my body isn't failing me. I must be getting attacked by something. So they think that your brain is running wild. You're still partially asleep. So your brain just imagines someone attacking you because it has to explain it somehow.
But then your body responds by like in the worst way possible. Having you freeze.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, so sleep paralysis, according to sleep studies, the longest it's ever actually lasted is 20 minutes. Because you're still in sort of a dream state, everything feels significantly slower. Kind of like Inception, how it's like, a year in your dream is like 10 seconds of real life or something crazy like that. So it feels like that way. But most people only get sleep paralysis for like 1 to 7 minutes. So now we're going to talk about some movies for spooky season. These aren't exactly scary. They're just fun Halloween-themed movies and some horror movies. So I guess I first want to talk about, you didn't get a chance to watch this, unfortunately, and you really should try to before the anniversary on October 12th, because it's one of the greatest films ever created. In fact, there's a documentary about this called The Greatest Worst Film. And we're talking about my favorite film of all time, Troll 2. Troll 2 is not Trolls 2. Troll 2 is actually a movie called Goblins that the director renamed to Troll 2 to try and build a hype. This is after the movie was released. To try and build some hype around this awful movie that failed called Troll by pretending to be the sequel.
Wait. So this was not a new movie?
No, this was. It was just called Goblins, and they renamed it Troll 2 later to try and pretend to be a sequel to a movie that it was not a sequel to.
All right, okay.
So apparently, I don't know how true this is, but according to urban legend, so the director is actually Italian. And allegedly, he didn't speak a word of English. The script was entirely translated from Italian to English, and he was directing an all-American cast. Not a single one of the actors and actresses is famous. I don't even think they achieved Q-tier fame after this. So basically, this movie's budget is non-existent as far as I'm concerned. There's like 3 troll costumes they have for the trolls. And
so there's actually trolls involved.
Yeah, they're not actually trolls, but they call them goblins because they didn't bother editing that. So this grandpa's reading like a children's book story about trolls to this kid who sucks at acting. Or goblins, sorry. And then his family decides to do this weird house swap with this weird like Amish type community. So these weird ass like Amish people are living in their suburban home, and they go live in this weird town. And it turns out that all the townspeople are trolls, and
oh no,
they're vegetarian trolls. So, but they want to eat people. So, in order to eat people, they have to turn them into vegetables.
why wouldn't they just have them eat people?
They're vegetarian.
Why? Like, why do they have to bring in this whole middleman?
I have no idea. And then basically, then his sister. So his sister's like in the first scene, just randomly benching like real weight, and she's supposed to be like an effeminate woman, and she's like putting up numbers in the bench press, and her like boyfriend climbs up the window to sneak in, and then I forgot the whole thing, but basically, she's like, "You're not man enough. You're always hanging out with your friends." He's like, "You're not a real man. You're always hanging out with your friends." It's like, that dialogue makes no sense. And then basically this guy and his two friends rent like an RV trailer to try and stalk her, basically. And then they get turned into vegetables and eaten. And then one of them gets turned into a tree.
Excuse me?
And there's a great popcorn sex scene, which I don't even want to spoil it. It's the most just bizarre, out of place thing ever.
Like pieces of popcorn having
No,
sex?
you have to, no. It's like, it's the most out there scene in the world. Basically, it's my favorite.
Oh, God.
It's funnier than anything could create. And then, the guy's dead grandpa's like disembodied head appears randomly to like tell him things. Then they defeat the trolls. It is like the most insane film ever created.
I will have to watch that.
Yeah, it is my favorite film. I mean, honestly, I don't know if my description did it justice. I recommend everyone watches it. It is truly the greatest, worst film ever.
And what is it? The anniversary's coming up?
The 30th anniversary is Monday, October 12th, and I can't wait. I'm going to watch it again.
That's so exciting.
I've seen it twice. Actually, I've seen it 3 times. I haven't seen it in years, but I just remember it so well. It's so great. And then, for myself, I think it's actually the greatest, worst movie ever created. The movie The Room is really overhyped. That movie's genuinely pretty bad. This movie's like actually really fun and hysterical. And I feel like a lot of people don't know about this because I don't really know why. Maybe it wasn't as memeable. It wasn't as big of a budget. Maybe it was directed by Italian. Who knows? But it's like one of the greatest films ever created.
Well, I have a kind of similar movie. Not really similar at all. Let me back up. It's called Howard the Duck. Have you seen it?
No, we were going to see it. We were going to watch it together that time, and then we just never did.
We have to binge all of these together, Steve, once we're back in the same area.
The same location. We can definitely do that.
Yeah. So basically the premise is this duck somehow zapped onto Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he just has to like live about his life as a duck. But no one really seems to think it's weird except for him. And then he falls in love with a woman. So then it's this woman and this animatron duck having a love affair. And it's like a pretty fine movie until the end. It completely spirals out of control. And I don't want to give anything away, but I think we definitely have to watch it together.
That's a film we got to watch. If we're going to keep the bad movies that are great track, and we want to stick the Halloween theme, I created a whole list of these the other day, and I'm going to run through a few of them. I think actually one of the greatest horror movies ever created from a comedy perspective has to be the film Jeepers Creepers 2, because unlike the other films that admit that they're horror comedies or like are pretending they are, the director of this film thought he made a good movie. Like, he thought he made a good movie. It is.
You don't think the Trolls guy did?
I don't know. I mean, no, but like this guy doesn't even pass it off as horror comedy. This man thought he produced the sequel to it. So Jeepers Creepers 1 is actually a little bit scary. Jeepers Creepers 2 is magical in its own way. It just this is just off the bat, if you go to the IMDb page, the amount of insane continuity errors that they didn't catch are hysterical. Like, there's this one scene where this jock is like running for his life to get back to the bus while Jeepers Creepers is like chasing him. And in one shot, he's about 2 feet from the bus. Then the next angle, he's like 2 or 3 football fields away.
Oh no.
Like, what? And then the Jeepers Creepers is literally just a moth. He's like a giant Mothman. He's not Mothman, right? But he's a giant moth-like man.
But he is a Mothman.
Yes, he is a Mothman, not the Mothman. And at the ending is preposterous. It does an all-around awful film. It's so funny. They made a third one, right? Which actually sucked. I was really bummed about it. It wasn't like fun or funny. But like this guy thinks he made a serious horror movie, and it is great because it's terrible.
That sounds really good.
In terms of like an actual really fun horror comedy film, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is incredible. It is a parody of The Cabin in the Woods, which isn't that already like a parody of horror movies or something?
Have you not seen The Cabin in the Woods?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. I was actually going to bring that up. I think you would love it.
All right, we'll talk about it after this, but basically in this movie, the premise is that Tucker and Dale are these two like lovable rednecks, and there are these college kids who are camping near them, and they're just trying to be friendly. They're trying to be good guys. And the college kids are convinced that they're like, murder rapist type people, and they accidentally one of them gets like knocked out or something, or is drowning, and they like, rescue her and bring her back to their cabin and are being really friendly, and the rest of them assume that they've like kidnapped her. And the premise is that they're trying to tell these college kids that they're friendly and like stop anything, and these college kids keep accidentally killing themselves, and then they keep thinking that Tucker and Dale are evil in doing this, but they're not. It's just such a funny movie.
I'm not really sure how that connects to Cabin in the Woods.
I don't know, but it's a parody of it.
Maybe I just have to see it. You have to watch The Cabin in the Woods. These college kids go out to a cabin in the woods, and they're sort of having a good time drinking and smoking and being goofy, and the whole time you can kind of see there's these people in a lab watching them, and it seems like they're prompting the creepy things that are happening in the cabin. And I don't want to give anything away, but it goes off the rails.
Is it like scary or funny or what?
I think it's just kind of crazy. It sets itself up as a scary movie, and then it just kind of dives into somewhere totally different.
Oh, that's interesting. I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what's actually an incredible horror movie that I watched a few years ago? I think it's still on Netflix. The Green Room. I cannot recommend that movie enough. It is one of the most suspenseful horror films I've ever seen. Basically, the premise is that this punk rock band, they're looking for a place, and they end up playing a show at this neo-Nazi bar rave thing. And they basically like witness a murder, and they're trying to escape. It is one of the most violent and probably suspenseful movies I've ever seen. Like it is so good. I cannot recommend it enough.
Have you seen Creep?
No, we've talked about this.
I feel like I've made you watch it. Have I not? I thought that we watched it together. Maybe not.
Maybe we were like on drugs or drunk.
Perhaps.
Cut off the first.
Very possible.
No, but I know what it's about. I need to watch it. It's about a guy like going insane, kind of, right?
Well, it's sort of this guy has someone come into his house to make a documentary about him.
Yeah.
And then he just ends up being a huge creep.
Which guy? The guy making the documentary, or the guy filming it, or the guy in the documentary?
The guy in the documentary. So then it's kind of in this weird thing where he's like, should I keep filming, or like, should I leave? And then it goes a little crazy.
Okay, I'll check that out. Have you seen the Final Destination movies?
Yes.
I watched all of them in like one day when I was hungover.
They're so bad, Steve.
They're only like an hour and 20 minutes long. They're so digestible. They're great.
Yeah.
They get worse. As the series goes on. They're really fun.
I just remember like a girl getting locked in a tanning bed or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one that I do recommend watching and one that I don't recommend watching.
They're both of them.
So the one that I do not recommend watching is The Lighthouse.
Is it really bad or is it really scary?
So my boyfriend, I told him that I wanted to go to a scary movie around Halloween last year. And he was like, all right, I'll take you to this Halloween movie. So we go to the movies. He takes me to the Lighthouse. Steve, when I tell you, I spent the entire movie trying to figure out just what the fuck was happening. I don't know if it was a dream. We're just going back and forth between timelines. Basically, the premise is there's this guy who moves to a lighthouse to work with this other guy. It's just the two of them on this island alone for months, and they get stuck there because there's a storm, and they just go absolutely crazy. And then there's some theory that maybe it's just one guy and he's gone crazy. I don't know. But I was like, this is not the Halloween chick flick, like, little scary movie that I wanted.
It's too complicated. So what's the movie suggest we actually watch?
That one is Coherence. And it's this movie about this group of friends, and they're just having a dinner party. And I can't remember exactly how they start noticing that things are off, but basically they walk down the street or one of them walks down the street and looks in the window of this house and sees himself and his friends having a dinner party.
Oh, what the fuck?
And it just goes into this, like, I love movies that have, like, a bend in reality. So this one it's so good.
Wow. I have actually just thought of two that I would recommend. Have you ever seen The Invitation?
Yes.
I don't really want to spoil it, but because that movie, I think it's best if you just go in kind of blind. But that movie, oh my God.
Well, that's also about a dinner party, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought of it. So
yeah.
They did an incredible job making you uncomfortable the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
The editing, the music, the pacing, everything.
I love that movie.
The pacing, I watched it a second time. It wasn't as good. But if you don't know what you're getting into the very first time, the pacing makes you so uncomfortable. Problem is, if you know what happens, the pacing just gets really frustrating. But, like, the first time you see it, it's incredible. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
The other one is Nightcrawler with Michael Fassbender.
Right. Is that an old movie?
It came out our senior year of high school.
Okay.
It's basically, the premise is that Michael Fassbender is this guy who gets really into filming tragedies and selling that to news sources. So much so to the point where he may or may not be creating his own, like, murders and gruesome.
Ooh.
There's something sketchy going on with how he's getting this footage. And it's, like, one of the most unsettling films I've ever watched.
What's it called? Nightcrawler?
Nightcrawler, yeah, Michael Fassbender.
That sounds really good.
All right, so I think that's we're gonna wrap up the episode now.
Yes. So hope you guys enjoyed. Please go follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Is it at podcast_misfits?
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates. And we're gonna have a special guest on in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna talk about some haunted places and ghosts. So please submit your ghost stories either on our website, in our DMs, or wherever you can. We'll also have a YouTube channel. I mean, it's just audio at this point because my camera's broken, and we're eventually gonna have some content on there. I just want to check it out. And check out all our blogs on our website. It's misfitsandmysteries.com. Yeah.
And you guys are going to love this special guest that we have on. You will not believe who it is. You know him from social and from his books that he's written. So very exciting.
Stay spooky, everyone, and have a nice week. Check out our next episode coming out next Thursday.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Stay spooky.